Welcome to Soulful Success by Design, the podcast for women who are done playing small, done following the rules, and ready to create success on their own terms. I'm Kendra Woods, a soul-aligned business mentor, 6'2" splenic projector, and the midwife to women's breakthroughs. For nearly a decade, I've been guiding ambitious women like you to step out of old paradigms of success and step fully into your next evolution through the art of human design, mindset, quantum energetics, and identity work. Here, we treat business like what it truly is, a sacred, creative process, a place to embody your becoming. So if you're ready to rise, ready to rewire how you think about success, and ready to lead from your soul, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. All right, everyone, welcome back to Soulful Success by Design, the podcast for soul-led women entrepreneurs who are here to redefine success on their own terms. This is the Redefining Success movement, where we trade hustle for alignment, trends for timelessness, and surface-level strategy for deep, soul-rooted leadership. And in today's episode, I'm really excited because I am having a beautiful conversation with Toni-Anne Butterworth-Myers, who is the CEO of Soul Journeying Women. Toni-Anne is the living embodiment of a full spectrum woman. I love that title. She is a home educating mama. She's an author, an artist, a psychologist, and guide. She creates music, poetry, and immersive experiences that help women rewrite what womaning, mothering, and leadership truly are. With almost 15 years of experience holding emotionally supportive spaces, she blends psycho-somatics with esoteric wisdom, gene keys, and divine feminine principles to help women like you and I shed shame, reclaim their power, and lead with audacious authenticity. Okay, so before we get started, what I want to say is what I love most about Toni-Anne's story, and we're going to get into this, is how she married the geek and the goddess within herself, blending psychology and embodiment with spirituality and artistry. And I think that her journey, as you'll see, is a powerful example of redefining success, not as cutting off parts of yourself to fit in, but more so as embracing all of you in the process of becoming. So, Toni-Anne, I am thrilled, so excited to have you here today. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Kendra, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm literally like, buzzing.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so I'd like to start by taking us back in your personal journey. You've spoken about this idea of marrying your inner geek and goddess. Can you share with us like what that looked like for you and how that blending actually began the transformation of your life?
Yeah. So, how that started for me was I went onto this journey of academia. So, I was one of the first in my family and in my environment, in my friendship groups, to go into academia. I discovered that I really loved psychology. And I went on to do my degree in psychology and I immersed myself into that in terms of like practical work, like in the work environments, in social work settings, nursing homes, lots of client work, and alongside that, like just like studying absolutely everything that I could around how I could support my clients through healing through trauma, transformation, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of my work from the age of 19, at 19, I worked in a nursing home, with people that were coming towards the end of their life cycle. So I've always had like really intense jobs. And as somebody that was young, who started that path quite young, a lot of my peers were much older than me. I took it upon myself to just like immerse myself in a theory of understanding all the underpinning theories of psychology, of mental health challenges, of trauma. And so, yeah, like my Venus is also in Gemini. So I love
Uh,
learning. I'm obsessed with learning. And yeah, like they say that you're always a student, right? And that's very much been what's true for me. So yeah, I've been in the academic path. I then went on to do my master's in psychology. I left the social work setting of client working, and actually I wanted to really understand more around things like emotional labor. So more highly intense work, like the work that I was doing, and I really wanted to create interventions to support other practitioners like myself to help them manage their own mental health and their own well-being. So that took me down another rabbit hole of theory of psychology and academia. And yeah, I studied a lot more around that in my master's. And I then was asked, I was pregnant. I randomly was pregnant in this intensive year of like my master's. I did it in a year, pregnant.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it was, and I simultaneously ran this intervention at like one of the biggest organisations in the West Midlands in the UK, actually. A 6 week intervention around wellbeing to help improve stress and reduce burnout whilst I was pregnant. And they asked me as I was leaving, I graduated with distinction, which is like, what? Pregnant? I'm sure my baby helped me.
Yes.
I'm sure it did. And they asked me to come back and teach. So I then went on this journey of teaching support for almost 6 years of psychology graduates and postgraduate students in all different branches of psychology. And yeah, I really love doing things like my thesis, which was like the 15,000 word,
Oh
piece
my
of
gosh.
which really supported me then when I went on later to write my book, which I did last year. So yeah, so that's my journey of like geek. I'm really geeky, but what I found was like when people say, why did you leave uni? That was actually like my dream job, that was like, what? You're asking me to come and teach? And I applied to do my PhD a few times to get a PhD studentship, which is where they fund your research programs. And I got to interviews. I wasn't a successful candidate, but twice I got interviews. And yeah, I just realized, you know what? I'm bored. This feels so dry. I'm feeling like I'm having to leave a really important piece of me, like the juice of who I
Yeah.
am at the door. Like, yeah, let's have a geek fest on neuropsychology and psycho-somatics and
Yes.
burnout and, and all of that stuff and the nervous system and, everything that my brain loves. But then at the same time, I was going through this huge spiritual awakening. I'd not long before I embarked on this journey, I'd gone traveling for like 3 months on my own, around
Oh,
Southeast
wow.
Asia. It was incredible. And I was like loving yoga. And then when I had my child, that spiritual awakening just like amplified and magnified. And I was going through my own trauma healing journey as well. And yeah, just like lots of ego death and rebirth. And I felt like I can't leave the spirit behind, like matter is important to me. It really is. And the mind and, the subconscious, but actually spirit is equally as important to me. And I can't be somewhere, for hours and hours on end a week
Hmm.
pouring into, this work and this part of my path when I'm being asked to leave a huge part of me behind, this spiritual part of me, this creative, artistic, that's twerking to like and making up songs as I go, and that's a bit melancholic with poetry and
Yeah.
is in deep love with the goddess and with life. And I couldn't do it. And so that's when I decided to marry both when I left the academic world. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to set something up on my own. I'm going to set up some spiritual interventions and teachings and programs that have the roots of my academic background in that, they're
Mhm.
really grounded in theory, in trauma-informed practices, in
Yes.
somatics, in matter, right? The human can have these spiritual experiences, but not that takes them out of the body necessarily, but anchors them
Mhm.
further and deeper into humaning, into life, as well as simultaneously knowing the divinity within. And so, yeah, that then just started this whole path.
I love that so much. And I relate to that story in the sense of like I'm a student at heart. I've often said like I will be a lifelong student. I love to learn all the things, nervous system, like yes, yes, yes.
Mm,
But then yeah, there does come a point where you're like, okay, but I want to actually bring in the creativity, the expressive side of this. And I think that for women that are listening, I would say like this is your story and your journey, but I think there's something for all of us women, I think, and just for humans in general, where you get to a point in your journey of life where you realize, there's this other part of me that I really want to bring to the table.
mm,
And it's like, how do I do that? What does that look like? And I think a lot of times we think that we can only bring this one part of ourselves forward.
mm,
This is a part I'll bring forward. This is professional Kendra. That's, all prim and proper, but it's like there's this other side that, like you said, that's twerking and like, dancing and free. And it's like, well, where does she land? And so
mm,
I think listening to your story, it gives us all permission to look at all those different parts of ourselves and say, how can I bring more of that part of me forward and let that part shine and know that you get to weave all those pieces together. Um, I think that's beautiful. So, Tony, and how would you say then, like once you've, weaved these two sides of yourself together, which I'm sure like you're multidimensional, we all are. So there's other sides of you as well, but I'm wondering like how has your definition of success evolved since weaving them together? Because I think sometimes we look at success as one dimensional, but it's also very much multidimensional too. What's
mm.
your take on that?
Oh, yeah, that's a delicious question. So, I would say back in the day when I was like on this academic journey, success was the distinction, right? It was getting the distinction. It was finishing my master's. It was being asked to return to come back and teach to undergrads and postgrads. It was, getting the pay and all of that kind of stuff. And what really had me question it is when the second time that I was interviewed for my PhD and they didn't accept me. And I
Mhm.
remember them saying like, your idea, it's great. It's really innovative. However, we can't blah, 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 blah. And I
Mm.
remember that word. We can't, and I was like, how can innovation and can't belong in they don't belong in the same sentence. Like they
So
don't
true.
play in the same party, in the same paradigm. And so I remember thinking at that time, that was when a shift happened because there was a part of me that thought success would be like, I'm doing the teaching tick, I've got the distinction tick. It would be me being able to have this PhD and be funded for it and be successful, the successful candidate. And walking away from that was like, actually, no, that was successful walking away from that because I was doing what was true and authentic for me. And I realized that innovation, for me, we all have different values and value systems. But I felt like innovation is essential for me. It's in all of my work, in all of my programs, there's innovation, there's new, and that was what that was what attracted me to apply for that PhD in the first place. And the moment they said can't, and I realized, what else success is for me? Kicking down that door of can't. And this is like, I kind of ran with that and carried on with that. And success for me, a lot of my work now in my programs and with the women I work with, I talk a lot about, when we speak about manifestation and co-creation and reality creation, about getting really clear on your deep desires and where it's coming from. Is it coming from the metrics of life, of what success it looks like, you know? Because we have these mundane metrics, right? These program condition metrics of like the money, the house, the blah 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 blah. And those are really beautiful if that's what your heart deeply desires, you know. But for me, I felt a huge shift around, yeah, there is that. But then there's also success is also for me being authentic. It's also for me being able to bring all of me to the table. And that example of the PhD and in teaching in general, I wasn't able to because they were using words like can't. And there's a part when we talk about archetypes, I have a very strong rebel archetype.
Hmm.
You know, and that like I say, there is definitely the geek and the student and the seeker, but there is this rebellious of like I'm constantly wanting to push the boundaries of because that's where evolution comes from, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where growth and transformation comes from. And so yeah, like success for me is constantly proving ourselves wrong in a way, you know, and
Yeah.
constantly proving can't wrong. And you know, okay, if that's not one avenue, then what's the alternative?
Mhm.
And so yeah, success for me is authenticity, is being able to bring all of me into the room, at least. And when I say all of me, we go through seasons, right? Like there's different seasons where
Yeah.
different archetypes will want to be louder, you know? And it's about really creating a life that allows these different expressions of me to move through, to play in, you know, to allow the different colors that live in me to create this like canvas of my life artistry, rather than constantly drawing on the ones that feel comfortable and familiar or that are likable, you know, because that's what people you know, people expect, or that's what
Mhm.
makes me acceptable, socially acceptable, that actually what's successful for me is being brave. And even if people don't like it, or if it makes me uh, a bit ostracized or a bit abnormal or weird or quirky, then that's okay if it means I'm in my full expression and I'm in my authenticity. So
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, that is so beautiful because we're all here to be in our fullest expression. I feel like collectively as humanity, like that's our collective purpose, right? Is to be in like full expression. And I love what you said. You said success is doing what is true and right for me. When you said that, I thought that right there. That's what it is, right? Doing what is true and right for me. And that does take the courage and bravery to be able to do that. So I'd like to talk about now. You talked about like life artistry, and you're using the word artistry. And I know in our previous conversations and in just looking at your work, you talk about embodied artistry. So I'd love to talk about that here. And can you share with us like what does that actually mean, and what does that look like in practice for the woman who's like, yep, that sounds so good. I want to do that, but like, what is it? What does it look like? Can you share
Mhm.
that with us?
Yeah, so for me personally, embodied artistry is around the body being a vessel, you know, the body as a channel, as like the paintbrush, as the pen, you know, for the poet, as this vehicle that we have. And, you know, I think in spirituality, there's typically or conventionally in spiritual convention, you know, what we typically see is this divorcing from the body, escaping the body, ejecting, getting out of the body, you know, into spiritual peak states. And for me, embodied artistry is around acknowledging and knowing the body as being a channel, a vehicle for source, creator, you know, whatever semantics you want to use, God, divinity, to move through us and create, you know, and create in the unique way that only we can do, only we have the blueprint for. And so when I'm talking about embodied artistry, that is what I'm speaking of and I'm speaking into is that the body isn't something that's divorced from that. So in terms of creativity, bringing that into tangible, like 3D life, it comes through us from source, through the crown chakra, all the way down and bringing it into matter, into material, is that we're feeling into the somatics, feeling into the sensations that are coming up. And so, a big part of that for me, in terms of my creative process and what I support clients through in their creative process, is emotional alchemy. In that all of the sensations and the emotional experiences that we're having, even, the trauma that we've had, is there's gold living in all of those shadows, and they live in the body. The body is the map of the subconscious. In somatics, that's a big teaching, a big principle of somatics. And so what that means is he's bringing the body on board into the creative process, into the emotional alchemy process. And so for my work with my clients, we do a lot of embodiment work in terms of like dance and movement. And I'll often ask clients to like bring into, when they're feeling into the body, emotional experiences and somatic experience, like bring shape into that. Show me the shape. What does it look like? Like, what's the texture feel like? What does it smell like? The sensory experience of what it is to actually have that, like, that powerful emotion, whether it's a negative, quote unquote, or positive. It's all material, it's all prima material, raw material, as the alchemists would say, for gold. It's all the lead for gold. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, like through sound and through movement and through, I like to work with the animal body as well, like really bringing into like the raw. We do a lot of sexual work as well, and so that's a big part of it, like unshaming sexuality and allowing our eros to move through the body, especially with women, as our divine feminine energy, and then using that, letting that move through the body and creating artistry with that. So when I say artistry, I never used to see myself as someone that's creative because I used to think that an artist is someone that sits and paints.
Exactly.
And that's not true. We're all artists because we're all co-creators. We're all co-creators. We're all co-creating our reality with source, God, divinity, universe, whatever semantics you use, whatever word you want to put there. So we're all co-creators. We're all artists anyway. It's just that some of us have a more prominent artist archetype. And
Mhm.
so what I learned for me is that artistry wasn't just about, in fact, I don't paint at all, really. It was about poetry, it was about singing, it was about dancing. And it later went on to like writing my book. It was about the academics that I'd been doing.
Right.
Looking back in retrospect, all those courses that I taught in uni that felt really dry to me, and I'd try and like bring in different activities and the intervention I created in the workplace, all of those things, that the assignments that I wrote, that was all art, that was all creativity. And I guess now my embodied artistry comes through, as I said, through my music, through poetry, through content. If you're a content creator, you're an
Hmm.
artist, whether it's through reels, whether it's through stories, like you're an artist. And yeah, and now through like programs that I create, my mastermind, and through co-creative collaborations such as this with you, Kendra. So yeah, that's the embodied artistry in summary.
Oh my gosh.
Summary.
I'm over here grinning so hard because this is so delicious. So here's what I want to share with you. So it was just last year. So yeah, just last year that I really began to understand or notice the gap in just in my work with working with clients. I do human design, right? And so that's where I first saw the gap where women I would work with, we would talk about their human design, which is like their energetic blueprint, and they would get it here, right? We would cognitively get it, intellectually get it, but there was this block of allowing it to like drop into the body to really feel what that feels like in the body. And I thought, oh my goodness. I'm like, that's what it is. Like we've been so conditioned to be, focused on like the neck up, right? Intellectualizing, learning, all of that, that we've forgotten about the body.
Mm.
And so anyway, so I got into this somatic work with a coach that I worked with last year, and I cannot tell you, it felt a little scary at first, right? Sitting with some of the strong emotions that came up. The first thing I felt like I just wanted to run. I was like, no, I don't think I want to deal with this. But what I noticed is that when I sat with it and breathed through it and, we did different exercises, I was amazed at how I was able to actually process that through my body. And it wasn't a bad thing. It was almost like parts of me began to come back online. Like the lights had been shut off, but then all of a sudden lights started like popping up, ping, 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 ping. And new ideas, new creativity, this new energy started flowing through. And I think that that's so important because I hear women say often, well, I'm not that creative. I'm not really a creative person. And I'm like, yes, you are. Like we're all creative, but I think that we have to get clear again on redefining creativity and artistry, just like you just did so beautifully. Artistry isn't necessarily sitting at a, you know, what do you call it, a canvas and like painting something. It could be your expression as artistry, you
Mm.
know? And so anyways, I'm kind of rambling here, but I really want people listening to get how important it is to truly embody and sit with your emotions. And I'll defer to you on this. Like, what have you seen in your world? What happens when a woman really does like just alchemize the emotions that she's feeling and she allows herself to sit with them and embody them and breathe through them and dance through them? What do you see happening? Like, what's the outcome that happens?
Mm. Power.
Yes.
Power. Like
Hmm.
that's the I feel it even as I say it, like
Yes.
goosebumps, power. It's one of my favorite things to witness, to see. It's such an honor and a privilege to see a woman, and we talk about it like we throw the word around all the time, don't we? Like, oh, empower, be in your power,
Yes.
you know, and be empowered. But there is nothing like witnessing a woman do the things that you've just mentioned, like feel the feelings, be it like land in her body, like
Mhm.
land, arrive fully in her body, feel that, feel scared of that as well. That's
Mhm.
okay, feel all the overwhelm feelings and everything that comes with that. And then suddenly seeing that alchemize and that transformation, that shift
Right.
into power. Wow, like, oh, all that emotional energy I was experiencing is just power, you
Yeah.
know? Wow, all that anxiety and like really feeling into that. And a lot of the work that I do with clients, if they're feeling anxiety or rage, these negative emotions, feel this rage. Can you feel it? Can you feel that's power?
Mhm.
And that anxiety when you're really anxious, can you feel it? Can you feel the sensations in your body? Like just take them. That's power. That
Yeah.
is all power. It's just trying to find like a way to be channeled and to
Right.
be expressed and to be held. And a lot of this work is often around um, creating a body that can hold and can circulate that power. So
Hmm.
just like with electricity, if there's too much electricity, if there's too high a voltage going through a bulb that can't hold that voltage, it blows, right?
Yep.
And that's where we have, burnout, or we have, people speak about like Kundalini psychosis and all of that when the spiritual awakening kind of doesn't go right, right, in quote unquote.
Hmm.
And it's because the body's not primed to hold it. The nervous system isn't primed to hold it. And so a lot of our work is not around feeling less. It's actually
Right.
about priming the body to be able to hold, circulate, and feel, experience more.
Mm.
That's how we step into our power more. It's not about crying less or, not feeling the negative, quote unquote, negative emotions. It's not less, it's more. It's
Yes.
feeling more, more, and more, and more. And the more we hold our power, the more we come into our power, the more we will experience and feel more. It's expanding our capacity to hold and circulate more.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just an amazing, amazing experience to witness. So yeah, I would say power. I would say power, and
Mhm.
also one of my clients said, "I'm no longer afraid of my dark," and that was
Right.
like, oh,
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. That is so good. And I love how you I love the analogy you used with electricity and the light bulb. Like that's what it's felt like for me is like I feel like my inside world has strengthened in its capacity for what it can hold.
mm,
And the thing that I've been through things this year where if I had gone through them, even just a couple of years ago, it would have knocked me out. I'd have been like, I'm done, under the covers, no one talked to me. But just learning how to even just simply just hold my emotions and be with them and not try to make them wrong, not try to, well, what's wrong with me? What's going on? Not trying to intellectualize and figure it out, just letting it be and giving it a place to be held. And you don't need to look a certain way. It's just you get to move through me, right? And where do I get to channel this energy? Um, and that's something I share that with my daughter, like when she says, she'll say, "Oh, mom, I'm so nervous," or "I just feel so anxious." And I'm like, "Okay, that's great. Then let's look at where we can allow that energy to move to." I think that's such a beautiful the way that you've described it is okay, where do you get to now channel that energy versus, oh, I got to keep it bundled up inside of me and I can't let it out. No, let's channel it somewhere. Where does it want to go?
mm,
That
mm,
is so powerful. And I think you realize too, or at least I'll speak for me, like I began to realize just how capable I was.
mm,
Like, I'm capable of more than I even ever thought I was.
mm.
And I think that's important for women to know, right? Because we can say it all day, you are stronger than you even know. And it's like, okay, but what does that even mean? Like, how do I get there? You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I love that. So, what would you say then, like for any women that are listening who maybe feel disconnected from their emotions or from their creativity, what is like one simple practice that they can begin to help them practice some emotional embodiment?
Mm. Okay, so I would say one of the first places to go if there's like a disconnect, and some of just what you were touching on earlier about like not knowing our strength and trying to hold it all in, a lot of that comes from shame of emotionality. We live in a society that shames emotionality, and for women in particular, in the past, we were condemned and labeled as hysteria. It was labeled as, hysteria, and there's something wrong with us, and, we're mentally unwell and all sorts of stuff if we were experiencing emotionality. So, the body remembers that. The body remembers that. And from an ancestry perspective, we remember that. Like there's so much trauma around that. So it's fear and shame. And so I would say the one of the first places to start is around unshaming that, around unshaming emotionality, because in terms of your creativity, as I explained earlier, like your creativity is directly connected to your emotionality. This is alchemy. This creativity is emotional alchemy. Some of the most incredible poets and artists, and and your programs. When they say your mess is your message, it's so true. It's cliche, but so true. Like some of your most incredible, most impactful programs or messages or podcasts or
Mhm.
whatever it is that you have to share or piece of voice that you have to share comes from your own lived embodied experience of the trauma and of the emotional experiences that you've had in connection with it. And so, yeah, I would say one of the practices is first just to recognize that there is shame around emotionality, and I need to unshame some of my emotionality. So
Mhm.
that's first and foremost. And we can do, you can do some journaling around that, but sometimes it's just as simple of getting in the body and feeling into like what am I actually feeling? What am I actually feeling right now? If I was to really go there, what am I actually feeling? A practice that I did with someone recently was, what is it that you actually want to say? They were like, I don't know what I want to say. They were feeling really creatively stuck. And I was like, okay. And we did some work and there was some tears and there was some crying. And I was like, okay, now you've done a bit of release. What do you want to say? Now you know it's safe. It's just me and you. Tell me what you want to say. And she said, and it was like, wow, I got goosebumps. And I could literally see her aura getting bigger and bigger as she's like saying what it is that she wants to say. So a lot of the work that I do with clients as well is around, yeah, like feeling in the body. What am I feeling? What am I actually feeling? And giving it shape, moving with it, like literally moving with it in the body. What does it feel like? If it's shame, does it feel crunchy? Giving it an actual shape in the body and self-touch.
Mm.
Self-touch is incredible. So again, this is unshaming sexuality and sensuality. There's a lot of like sacral chakra work here that you might feel. And,
Yeah.
like just touching those places where you feel the shame in the body or where you feel the strong emotion, and just touching it gently. So something that I brought into Sacred Shame Seduction recently was bringing in a lover's touch or bringing in like a lover's caress in that place. Like if it was your lover and, a lover's just exposing this deep, dark secret,
Yeah.
of this part of themselves that they feel really embarrassed and humiliated and ashamed about. How are you going to treat your lover? You're going to treat them with like so much love and compassionate curiosity and like, wow, thank you for sharing that with me. You're going to, tenderly touch them. And so, yeah, so we're bringing like a lover's touch and holding oneself, or mother's touch if that feels foreign to you, a compassionate touch. And yeah, I like to bring in monologue. So that's another piece.
Mm.
So another piece is actually speaking out loud. So sometimes I'll get clients to actually record on their phone, like audio record what it is that they're wanting to say. So what it is that they're feeling, what emotion they're feeling shamed about. So if it's a specific experience that happened recently that made them feel ashamed or that made them feel shut down or, whatever's happening, to actually record it. And the reason that I ask them to do that over journaling it is
Mhm.
because the voice is so powerful. It's so powerful. And when shame is in the building, it
Mm.
shuts the voice down. And so the voice just like gives your body, your subconscious, that part of you that wants to come out, that wants to
Yeah.
speak, it gives it permission, it gives it a voice, it gives this emotion a voice, gives this
Mhm.
part of you a voice. And it's in the privacy of just you and you. And it also simultaneously creates a sacred witness. So you are witnessing you. You become your
Mhm.
own sacred witness. And that's one of the best ways to be able to support ourselves in like unshaming, in deconditioning, is becoming our own sacred witness. And you can bring embodiment. When I say monologue, there's times where I do actually do mirror work and we bring it in as if,
Yeah.
and we really exaggerate it and like make it big because
Yes.
shame is small,
Hmm.
it shrinks us and it
Yes.
makes us small in our bodies and it makes our voice really small. And, so we get like caricature big with it
Yes.
to like really start to transform that energy of shame into power.
Oh my gosh. Toni-Anne, this is just absolutely amazing. And I love, like, I'm sitting here taking notes as you're talking. I'm listening to you. I'm like taking notes too. Um, I love that. So a few things, like, I love that you talked about like naming the emotion and also moving with the emotion in your body and giving it a shape. That was something that was very new for me about a year or so ago. I was like, what do you mean give it a shape? And at the time my coach was like, stop trying to think about the shape. Just let it flow. Like, what is it? And I'm like, well, it's a circle, it's pink, and I was just throwing this stuff out and it didn't make sense to my mind, but it made total sense to my body, you know?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
that was so interesting to witness that when I gave myself permission to just get out of my mind and let my body speak using my voice, like I was shocked at what came through.
Mm.
So I love how you move your clients through like, yeah, let's use your voice. Let's let those parts of you have a voice. I mean, so powerful. Okay. Oh, so good. All right. So here's what I'd love for us to go next. I know that you talk about like reclaiming your divine feminine as well, reclaiming your divine feminine power to help us rewrite what it means to be a woman, a mother, and a leader. Let's talk about that divine feminine for a moment. And because I think that maybe someone listening to this may have heard, again, this term before, divine feminine. Explain to us, like, what is the divine feminine, and how do we get to connect to that part of ourselves?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. It's a beautiful question because I think that there's a preconception or a preconceived idea of what the divine feminine looks like. We have like the aesthetic of the divine feminine all over Instagram that she looks a certain way. She looks a certain way, she's a certain age, and she's doing a
Mhm.
certain thing, and her life looks a certain way. And actually, my take on what the divine feminine is that she has many faces, and something that I taught in full spectrum feminine and what I was sharing about is that actually when we're embodying being the full spectrum woman, what we're actually doing is allowing the divine feminine in all of her different expressions to move through us. So like a kaleidoscope, I believe the divine feminine has a kaleidoscope of expression, and that we are the divine feminine in physical form, with that kaleidoscope of expression moving through us, asking us to express and embody at different points, different seasons, different parts of our soul contracts, of our dharma, of our purpose. Asking that we bring and we express and weave different aspects or different ones of our faces in at different times. And so, for example, like the triple face goddess of the divine feminine, of the maiden, the mother, and the crone, that's just like one example of the
Okay.
three different archetype or expressions of the divine feminine. But we typically see the maiden, as
Yep.
as an aesthetic. But actually, there's the mother as as the divine feminine.
Mhm.
And what that looks like and what that feels like, and the crone, and I know people will teach that at different seasons we embody this. When you become a mother,
Mhm.
you embody the mother archetype, but actually I feel that she lives in us at all times.
Exactly.
The crone has been with us since day one. Like, I don't know about you, but I look at my daughter and she's like such a wise soul.
I know. I did the same thing. I'm like, are you sure you're just a young little teenager?
Like, she's such a wise soul, and I can feel her. A crone. I know that
Mhm.
sounds like really okay, but seriously, I really can. I can feel her crone, and that's just obviously three in the triple goddess, the three-faced goddess. That's just one example, but I actually think there's so many more than three faces of the divine feminine. And so when we're talking about allowing the divine feminine to move through us, I really believe that it is simply allowing access to our own divinity. I don't believe divinity, source, God is something that is outside of us. I believe that it's inside of us,
Yes.
that we
Yes.
all have access to divinity. And in a program I ran called Worship, in that it was all around accessing your divinity through the feminine form, through the body. So a lot of that was around reclaiming the body, reclaiming feminine sexuality, reclaiming emotionality. And again, like there's this idea of the divine feminine is soft. soft and,
Wow.
she's always soft and she's living her soft life. But Callie, when we think of the guys, Callie, she's not soft.
Exactly.
You know, she's not soft. And like I taught in Full Spectrum Feminine, if you think of the chakra system, like we have the heart, we do have the heart chakra, but just beneath that, we have the solar. And best believe your solar is going to tell you when a boundary needs to be put
Yeah.
in place. And you have to exercise, you have to allow circulation of that solar energy in
Mm.
order to create the soft moments of soft life,
Exactly.
it's not always that. It's not always soft, divine feminine. Like sometimes it's fire, divine feminine, where she
Mhm.
has to fight for what is right and to protect her children or to protect the animal kingdom, to protect like everything that we see that's happening on this earth, to be a real advocate for humanity. It is not always soft girl, divine, Bridget or I don't know, like Mother Mary, this kind of softer archetype of the divine feminine. Like sometimes it's Kali, sometimes it's Sekhmet, sometimes it's Isis with the sexual energy, that, that she literally reincarnated her lover through, brought him back to life through her sexual energy. Like sometimes it's the magician, it's the sorceress, the priestess that needs to be on board, And so a lot of the work that I do with women, and particularly in full spectrum feminine and in worship, was all around like, let's stop divorcing these different aspects of who you are because the divine feminine is all of them. All of
Exactly.
them. She's your crazy, she's your
Mhm.
crazy, you're insane, and a lot of what I would say is that all of you is welcome in the temple. That is what the divine feminine is bring all of you. I want an intimate relationship with you because I live inside of you.
Mm.
I live inside of you, and like we're always trying to like access divine feminine as something that's outside of, and
Absolutely.
it's here. It's here. And if we're shutting off different parts of ourselves, we're shutting off access to divinity inside of us because she's everywhere. She's
Yes.
in the blood, she's in the sweat, she's in the tears, as well as the laughter, as well as the love making and the holding and the tender moment. She's everywhere. So,
Mm.
so yeah, that is what the divine feminine is to me. It's omnipresent and not in the sense of she's outside of us omnipresent, but omnipresent inside of the universe that we are,
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
being. So yeah.
Mm. I love your passion around this. And it's so, so true. I love when you spoke about how, the divine is not outside of us. It's within us. That
Mm,
was a huge, I have my own story around that, but that was a huge realization for me. Like I just kept getting so what's the word? Because I grew up in the church and I
mhm,
remember getting so confused, like, why are we talking about the divine? Like it's like out there somewhere, and I was young then, so you couldn't ask the questions. I'm like,
yeah.
Isn't the divine within me? Like, what are we talking about here? And so as I became an adult, I was like, I felt that truth, and so I love that you're speaking to that. Okay, so oh, this is so good. Okay, we are going to, so here's what I'd love to wrap this up with is you gave some great ways for women to kind of sit and practice some embodiment and some emotional alchemy. Um, what would you say, like what would be, I just want to just hit on one more piece here, the shame piece, because I feel like that's so big.
Mhm,
And I think it holds some weight for a lot of women because we do carry a lot of shame around who we are, how we feel, how we lead, how we parent. Like there's all this
mhm,
shame that gets like tangled into our being. And would you say that being able to just speak power to that shame and just admit the thing that we feel shameful of is in and of itself healing? For
mhm.
women to just, they don't have to admit it to anybody else, but maybe they just admit it to themselves. Here's what, and I think you did kind of touch on this a little bit. Like, here's what I feel shameful about. And maybe it's just a conversation between you and the divine, right? But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say so. Yeah, like shame lives in the dark, right? And so
Hmm.
that's why a lot of my work, both my own personally and what I've done, like I said, like since the age of 19 has been, shadow work
Yeah.
in working in the dark because that's where shame is hiding in the crevices. And what happens is when we illuminate what's hiding in the dark, we illuminate the shame and we shine a light on it, it
Mhm.
starts to transform, its charge and its grip starts to lessen. Its hold on us starts to loosen.
Hmm.
And it slowly starts. So with any emotion, it's just energy in motion, right? It's energy
Yes.
in motion. And so with things like shame in the scale, when you look at the scale of consciousness, like shame is
Yeah.
at the bottom, right? It's the most dense, most
Yes.
dense of all the emotional energies. And so when we're talking about this density, when we shine a light on it, and what I like to do is bring compassion and curiosity into it. So if you look at like the scale of consciousness, I think like acceptance is three or four stages up from that. So bringing just acceptance into the space of
Hmm.
shame simultaneously completely shifts the experience of shame. It completely
Hmm.
shifts its density. It starts to, and you can feel it. This is why I
Hmm.
do a lot of somatic work and feeling it as a sensation in the body, and embodiment work is because you can literally feel it in the body change form. You
Yeah.
can feel its density start to loosen a little bit, as though it can breathe. It's like you're almost like the love and the acceptance and the compassionate curiosity that you're bringing into the space of shame allows it to breathe. Sometimes I feel with all emotions, not just shame, that they just need a witness.
Hmm.
And there's a beautiful poem. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's by Rumi. It's called The Guest House. And it's about allowing every emotion that's coming into the guest house, the home, the being, or treating each guest equally, so treating shame as beautifully and as compassionately and as curiously and as lovingly as you would excitement or joy or
Yeah.
all of those things. Okay, shame is in the building, let's sit with it. Let's sit with it. Let's like give it some space. Let's give her a cup of tea.
Right.
You been through? What you been through, girl?
Just thinking that, I'm like, let Shane pull up a seat, give her a cup of
Yeah.
tea. Let's talk.
Yeah, like what you've been through. Tell me what you've been through, tell me, show me what that feels like, and sometimes, and we work with the window of tolerance from a trauma-informed perspective,
Right.
we work with the window of tolerance in that we're not just diving straight in. We're working with when we're being stretched, we're working with when we're going into hyper arousal and that's where touch comes in and all these different practices that activate the parasympathetic nervous system to let us know it's safe. It's safe, and that's a lot of the work that we did in sacred shame seduction recently was around like creating safety in the body whenever shame is in the building, because the more brave you become in your life and the more courageous you become in your life and the more authentic you become in your life, the more shame you will experience.
Yep.
you know
Yes.
it's
Yes.
like shame and liberation are two sides of the same coin. And so if we want to be liberated, we have to build our capacity to really sit with shame as an alchemist, you know. And so yeah, like that's a lot of what this work is. So absolutely, like it is about shining a light on it, illuminating it because it hides in the dark. And if it's hiding in the dark, it's choking you without you knowing it. It's choking
Mm.
your voice. It's impacting, every something else we spoke about. It doesn't just live in the sacral chakra. It lives there, but all the chakras are connected, so it's actually impacting everything, including your throat chakra, including your will in your solar, including your heart, how you love. It's
Mhm.
difficult to love and allow yourself to be loved by both humans and by life and by divinity when you feel so much shame, or when you don't even know that you feel so much shame. Like, that is actually more of a blind spot than when you,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth. It's
Yeah.
difficult for you to access your priestess powers, your third
Yeah.
intuition, if it's so calcified with shame, if there's
Yeah.
shame in the temple around the fact that you're a seer, around the fact that you see things that other people can't see, and that
Mm.
makes you weird. You need to be okay with being the weirdo in the room if you're going to
Mhm.
embody your priestess, your intuitive, your creative, your
Mm.
speaker. Often if you're a leader and a speaker, you're the first one to know. You're the first one to know. And there's a lot of shame around that. There's a lot of
Yes.
shame around no one gets me. No one gets my message.
My gosh.
Everyone thinks I'm weird, or they don't see what I see. And so
Mhm.
working with shame just allows you to like feel anchored in your root of, it's okay that no one gets me. They're not supposed to. They're not supposed to get this message yet. They're not
Mhm.
supposed, it's okay. And can I keep going even when no one gets it yet? Because I'm
Right.
asked to deliver, to create, to
Mhm.
facilitate, to lead in this way, you know?
So
For
beautiful. Yeah. So beautiful. Oh my goodness. This has been such a rich and, quite honestly, like, healing conversation. Like, everything, I feel like you're just talking to me.
now.
Thank you, Toni-Anne. Yes. This is
I love
so
that.
good. So
Yeah.
good. Okay. So for those listening, where can listeners connect with you and experience more of your artistry and your work?
Okay, yeah. So I post quite a lot on my Instagram. So my handle is at I am Toni_Anne.
Okay.
And then I have my link tree on there, where you can connect on my website, where you can listen to my music, where you can see my different offerings as well. So I have a mastermind, that's new, that's in its infancy, and yeah, I do different programs that I'm teaching inside the mastermind and outside of the mastermind as well.
Okay.
So yeah, and you can, as I said, you can listen to my music, my blogs. You can also sign up for my newsletters for free love letters,
I love it.
and mysticism, psycho-somatics, like all the juice, all of these kind of conversations, this kind of dialogue, as well, and learn more about my offerings too.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, your artistry, and your wisdom with us today. It was so needed, and I really appreciate it. What I want to leave you all with is, first of all, if you love today's episode, go and connect with Toni-Anne and her work. If there's something that landed with you that we spoke about today, and you're like, oh, I really get this, I want to know more about this, like, reach out. You can tag either one of us on Instagram. Like, I'll put you in touch with her, but let us know. And I want you to take this conversation as an invitation to stop cutting off pieces of yourself in order to succeed. And instead, let your fullness, let your wholeness, let your, to use Toni-Anne's words, like the full spectrum of yourself, your heart, your body, your creativity, your spirituality, let that be the foundation of your leadership. This has been beautiful. Thank you for being here, Toni-Anne, once again. And thank you all for listening. And until next time, everybody, I'll see you then. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Soulful Success by Design. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in it, please leave a rating and review on iTunes to help me continue bringing more inspiring content your way. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Soulful Success by Design, or visit my website at kendrakwoods.com for extra inspiration and resources. I appreciate you so much and can't wait to connect with you in the next episode. Until then, remember to create success from your soul and on your terms.